I didn't have chores when I grew up. I didn't have that discipline. I didn't have that structure. I could go outside, run around, and everything. So I understand the value of structure because when I went into the world, I didn't know how to cook, clean, wash clothes, nothing. I was completely disabled on being able to do anything. I'm trying to show my son all the skills that I should have had before I even walked out of that door into the world today.
And and kids, young people, I know this, of course, from being a father of two millennial young ladies, and an educator, and just a man. That children, they love structure. Hey, family, welcome to another episode of the Black Man's Roundtable, and I am your host, Rodney Butler, and today I actually have my very first fellow podcaster on. He go by the name of MNG, and he is the host of the Farewell Mr. Nice Guy podcast. Looking very forward to talking with him today, and he is also a single father. So I've been wanting to do an episode, a show with, with a single black male father, and and talk about some of the challenges and some of the beauty of being in a very unique, rare situation or position in our society. So without further ado, MNG, say hey to the Black Man's Roundtable crowd, followers, man, and tell us anything else you want to tell us about yourself before we get started with these questions that we have.
Oh man, what's going on, everybody? Hey, it's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, I am MNG. I'm the host of Farewell Mr. Nice Guy podcast. Just to give you background on my podcast, it talks about my journey as a single father. It talks about relationships. It talks about marriage. There's a lot of positive stuff that we talk about, not only just for the black community, just for just anybody that's looking to be a parent, to be a better parent, to have better relationships. Stuff that people don't really want to talk about or don't have the people in their circle to talk about. So that's some things that we discuss.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate the intro. So look, we're going to dive right into it because as well as I do, time go by very, very quick. And we try our best to keep these things to about 60 minutes, but and hopefully we can do that. Hopefully we can do that today. I want to ask a little bit about personal background and how did you come to being a single father?
Man, so it wasn't my goal to be a single father. I think just like everybody else, my goal was to actually have a family, be a married man, have a family. I didn't want a baby mama. I didn't want to be a baby daddy. None of that situation, right? But, things happen and, I became a single father. And one of the things that I did was I actually had to take, my son's mother to court in order to get custody for my son. And it was an uphill battle because, just to let everybody know, I'm from Michigan. Michigan is now it's not, but back then, like 20 years ago, it was a woman state. So they will always grant full custody to the woman. If you had joint custody, it was always an uphill battle when it came to trying to get custody of your kid. Like the woman had to be in a dire situation on the street, nowhere to live, drugged out, just so you can actually get custody of your kid. Now, the ties have changed a lot now, but back then, I was fighting tooth and nail trying to get custody of my son because I seen him in a bad situation that he had no right to be in, and that was my calling to step up and say, okay, let me go ahead and put the right foot in front of the left foot and start marching towards getting custody of him.
Got it. Okay. What is the most rewarding part about being just a father in general, man. And I'll even share mine as well. But you know, what's most rewarding about being a father?
Now my son is 17. Okay, mind you.
Right.
I think the most rewarding part of being a father is watching my son grow and him accomplishing all of his goals that he seek, and him listening and implementing all the advice, wisdom, personality that I bestowed upon him over the years. And then when he realizes the effort that you put into him growing up, the sacrifices that you made, the triumphs and barriers that you had to overcome and go through, just so you can provide the lifestyle for them that you could not have, is probably one of the most rewarding pieces that I could ever encounter. It's better than getting a promotion. It's better than winning the lottery. Well, maybe not winning the lottery because that's life changing. But, but like, short story. So I went to help my son get his first car. Okay. Now I've been trying to get him to go through driver's training and everything. Like, I'm telling him, look, you are going to mess up my schedule with your schedule. So I'm gonna need you to get your license, get a car, and go out and venture to the world and drive. He started doing that and he purchased his first car, and I wanted him to buy it himself so he could understand the value and the importance of purchasing something yourself and taking ownership of it. And he told me before he got out the car and before I had left, and he was like, Dad, I really appreciate everything that you do for me. I don't feel like I tell you that I appreciate you enough. And those are the moments that, through all the BS that I went through with his mom, through all the barriers, through all the challenges that I had to face raising him and going through life and dealing with people that I didn't really want to have to deal with at work, and just going through all those things. That right there is everything that I worked for him to have. And it was, and it's always an emotional time, when I see, when he tells me stuff like that, especially after big things that we do, even though the small things do count, but it's like those big barriers that we get over, or those big accomplishments that we have, like graduation and getting his first car, just being there for him. And he's recognizing the impact that I'm having on his life.
Yeah, and mine is exactly the same thing. I have two daughters. They're a little bit, older than your son. A few years over, a little over 10 years more than your son. But what I would tell you is that it's the same thing. It's watching them achieve. Just watching your children achieve, and I would also, like to say that it was this story that not a story, but I guess a little short story that I was told a while back, and it goes, so this kid, this 17-year-old, graduated high school, left, went to college, and came back, or around 20 years old, 21 years old, came back, and he's listening to his parents and talking to his parents in a way that he hadn't, the deep conversation that he hadn't talked with them in a while since he was 17. And he told another person, I think a cousin or somebody, and he says, man, it's amazing how much my parents have learned in the last 3 or 4 years. So he don't realize that he grew up. He's like, man, they learned a lot in the last 4 years. And so, yeah, I just always think that's a funny story, man. But they do. The kids, the young people, they believe that we've learned something, and they don't even realize that they've learned something in those 4 years,
And even to go along with that, it's also funny that when you think about your kids, they think that you were never their age.
Exactly.
So, like, you were born a grown up, and you don't know anything. And I was actually sharing something with my son, and I was kind of telling him, I was like, eventually he got a girlfriend and everything, right?
Right,
So
right.
I'm like, no, eventually your girlfriend's gonna want to go out and hang out and everything. And he like, nah, she just happy being around me, and no matter what we do. And I'm looking at him like, yeah, son, that you gonna learn the hard way. Like it doesn't matter what you want to do. If she says she want to go do something, you need to go ahead and get it done. All
Get it,
that, oh,
get
she
it
just want to
done.
hang around me, and that's fine. No girl want to stay in the house.
Yep,
Like
yep. So,
I don't care what age she is, whatever. 16, she gonna want to go to the movies or let's go hang at the mall. She's gonna want to go do something but sit in the house, especially since you got a car now.
and
Like
she gonna want to go show you off.
exactly. So
So,
especially with
yep,
her friends. Oh, my friend's going to the mall. We should go too. You
yep,
got a
yep.
car. Let's go.
Let's
Well, I just
go.
wanted to sit in the house.
Yep.
Nah, let's go. And I'm trying to tell him he ain't listen to. He don't understand how. And I wanted to get my son not to be in a relationship in high school. I was like, marry the books. Don't marry
Right.
relationships. No, don't get so involved in a relationship in high school. Go after your money, get your stuff together because relationships are going to come to you when you're well put together. Then you want to chase after a relationship and you're not well put together.
Absolutely. Some parenting experience. What are some of the biggest challenge? Well, you will keep it to one. What is the biggest challenge you face? Being a single father.
One of the biggest challenge I face being a single co-parenting. Co-parenting
Which I'm gonna
is
ask you
one.
about again later on, a little bit later on. But yeah,
Okay, well, I won't go too deep into that. So one of the other challenges that I had to face with my son, and I think this is when he was younger, when I first got custody of him, was him understanding the transition from living with his mom to living with me full time.
mm-hmm.
So that was a challenge right there. My son would come home and tell me some of the most craziest things you ever heard. One thing that comes to mind, he came home and he told me, he came from his mom's house. He told me like, yeah, she said that she gonna have somebody coming off you. And I'm like, what, say it again? And kids repeat what they hear and they say the darndest things.
Yep.
But, you wouldn't expect to hear your kid say that, the other parent is looking to, take care of you in a manner where like they don't understand that, that means that's the end of you. No longer going to see you again. So having to get him to adjust to a whole new living situation,
Right.
adjust to, a disciplinary type of parenting style. And him not thinking that he could just run around, he could stay up all late at night, and just those changes through school, getting him into school and realizing that I can't put him in school without my name being on the birth certificate because it looks like kidnapping. Like you start to learn all these little various things that you don't learn from your parents in some cases.
Right.
You think that you could just go and sign your kid up, but then they looking at the birth certificate like, well, where's your name on the birth certificate? Something so small is something so valuable to an institution. So it was a lot of different challenges so far as behaviors in school, behaviors with me that I had to correct, bring him out of, but then he would go over there, then had to correct behavior again when he
Right.
comes back. So, all those little things just build up over time until you can just be able to set the line, to set the boundary, and then it's good from there on out. So all those challenges in the beginning was kind of like the hardest parts right there.
How has your community played a role in your parenting journey?
I'm gonna be honest.
Be
I
honest,
couldn't have
brother. Be
done it.
honest, brother.
I couldn't have done it without my community. I couldn't have done it without my mom. I couldn't have done it without my stepdad, her current husband. I couldn't have done it without my dad. I couldn't have done it with the people that I work with. Like them people, they helped me with my court case. They kept me sane. There were times where I really wanted to just go off on her.
Yeah.
There were times where, I broke down from things that my son had said to me, from things how trying to go through the court system, and the court system wasn't understanding my position. And that's what some people have to realize is the court system is going to be the most ambiguous situation that you're going to go through because they're not on anybody's side,
Mm.
even though you're the defendant in the case. I started my own case. And when I started my case, they still listed me down as a defendant. So my mom had to carry me through the whole situation. She was like, you need to stop being so nice to her. Hence the title of my podcast, Farewell,
Right.
Mr. Nice Guy. He was like, you need to stop being so nice to her. You need to really come down on her. And I'm like, but mom, it's not even necessary to come down on her. She was like, well, you being too nice. She's running over you. And I'm like, she's just going through a hard time. I'm giving her all kind of excuses and everything.
Right.
My mom being there, my stepdad being there, him, taking my son, and they're watching him for me while I go work these two jobs, trying to provide a life. Like I had my son for 4 days, 4 days through child support order. She had him for 3, and I still had to pay child support. And I still had to take care of daycare costs and everything for when I had to go to work. Like my community, the people really came through for me, helping me get through the court system, filling out the paperwork, filing motions, every step of the way. The people that I work with, I call my day one crew, they was there with me. They was there with me. My grandma was there with me until she passed away. Like the wisdom and education that them people had brought to the table that gave me so much energy and life to get through this whole process, to get to where I am today. I would be nowhere without them guiding me in the right direction. And even before my son was born, it was people still guiding me in the right direction, to be the best person, to be the best father, to be the best person, to be the best of everything, to provide for my son. And it started with my community.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't have the career that I have now to provide for my son without the community that surrounded me to lift me up. When they say that it takes a village, 100%, it takes a village. If you think at any point in time that you don't need somebody to help you raise or rear your kid in any way, shape, or fashion, or educate you in any way, shape, or fashion to be a better parent, you are dead wrong. Because my community really stepped up for me, and I appreciate them day in and day out. And I would do anything for them just to repay the favors and education and wisdom that they provided me going through the court system,
And
raising my child.
and as you talk about your community, I'm thinking about how the impact that is going, the positive impact that's going to have on your son. To see all of these, because it looked like a lot of your community were family members. Most were family members, or
Yeah.
many was family members, and the positive impact that's going to have on him to see all of these beautiful people, to step in and be there, for you. I know there were times where he didn't see, he was a baby or whatever, but then I'm sure that community continued to do, what they've been doing. And I just can't help but think about the beautiful, the positive impact that's going to have on him, going forward. And you guys were, you may have said, I don't think you said it, I hope I didn't miss it, but you guys were never married, right?
No, we was never married.
Okay, you're never married. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that the audience, knew the status of that. Okay, we're going to go right into a little cultural and social perspectives, and I'm going to ask, how do you address and navigate societal stereotypes or biases about Black fathers?
Man, stereotypes about Black fathers. I had went to a seminar, and they were talking about the stereotypes of Black fathers, that Black fathers are not in a home, Black fathers are not doing anything for their kids, and there's a lot of broken homes, with fathers. And one of the things I can do to defeat that is to show that we actually have a standing community of fathers that are in place. My podcast is the example of that. I have Black fathers that are on there that either have custody of their kids or they're in their kids' lives on a daily basis, and they come and speak about it to fight against those norms. There's a lot of things that we don't talk about so far as a positivity that when it comes to having a black father in the home, having a black father in kids' lives. So what I'm doing is I'm using my platform to speak against those stereotypes, to speak against those narratives, and put the black father in a more positive light, where we are, we are at least praised for the things that we do and the guidance that we provide, because we get beat down so much every day just walking out the door that we get no credit for anything that we've done. Even as father figures, we don't get credit for stepping up and being a father for maybe children that's not ours, and in every situation that follows that.
MNG, I'm gonna tell you, man. There have been study after study after study that shows that that black men, African American men, are the most involved fathers of any other group of men in America.
Yeah.
And so the stereotype is something that, like you said, you use your platform. I use this platform. Now I'm here in Atlanta, in Metro Atlanta. Okay. So, everybody know, look, you're up in Michigan. I don't know if you're in Detroit or not, but, I'm in, Metro Atlanta, and so, so someone might say, well, it's because you're in Metro Atlanta. What I'm about to say, I challenge people when they talk this stuff about black fathers and all this stuff. I said, well, I tell you what, here's what you do. Go to any one of these local public parks, okay? And if you see men out there with either their children or grandchildren or whatever, you come back and you tell me what those men look like.
Mm-hmm.
Because, brother, I would tell you this. Matter of fact, I just did this probably about 3 weeks ago. A guy from New York, and he was talking about staying down here, and he was talking about something about the news and on the local news, and how they show black men in a bad light and that kind of thing, and he's got into talking about black fathers or something. So anyway, but the conversation, I challenged him to do that. I said, look, just go to any one of these local parks, and I started naming him parks. Just go to any one of them, you pick it, and if you're going to see men out there, and he came back because in the gym, so I get to see him quite often, and he was like, brother, you're right. He said, I saw some white brothers out there. He said, but they're running with their headset on and taking care of themselves. He said, but on that playground, because I've seen it too many times. And the last thing I'll say about the stereotyping of black fathers is, when in fact, I'm going to be doing a black male educator, episode here, very soon.
Okay.
And so, I was an educator myself. And so one of the things that impressed me, people ask, so I chose to teach in Southwest Atlanta, one of the most, challenging, economically challenging places to teach at, in Atlanta. And so, but people were like, what do you most remember from teaching, down there, in that area? And I tell people, man, what I remember the most, and it's to stay with me forever, is how these young brothers, probably not in a nuclear home, they're not married or anything like that to their sons or daughter's mother, but watching these young men, because it was elementary school, watching these young men pick up their children, pants halfway down their butt, I'm gonna be straight up, but just the care and the tenderness and the way that they would listen to their children, man, I watched that every day, and it was absolutely to a point sometimes where you would almost get emotional watching these young brothers, and we watch people stereotype them. I mean, they look like the quintessential American, what American dub as a thug, right?
Right.
But when you see these men with their children, It's a story to see. And I'm not talking about, and look, that was the norm. It was rare to see one to just say, well, come on, let's go, grab the hand and just walk them home or whatever. That was very rare. Most of the
Right.
time you would see. So I just wanted to say that little bit about stereotypes, and also, brother, you being a single father, another statistic shows that single children that comes from single father homes usually are very high achievers. So
They are.
that is
They are.
yeah. So
They are.
that is something
And
as well.
I'll add to that. I had looked at a statistic, stat that, and I was trying to figure out how many black fathers, have custody of their kids, in Michigan, and I was surprised to see the numbers. So at the time I looked at us, it was about last year, but this is how I know the tides were turning. So there was a little over 5,500 fathers that had custody of their kids, going into like 2024. That was reported. And for me, that's a positive number because, and it doesn't really state how many kids they have that they're taking care of, but they are taking, the numbers are increasing, and that's great because more fathers are not just being involved daily. They're not just being involved just on weekends per a status order, but they're being involved as the primary caregiver. And even more statistics out there because everybody sees like athletes and everything. And I was just explaining this to my friend yesterday, and we were out at dinner, and I'm explaining to her. I'm like, well, what I want you to understand is that statistically, that, and it's not trying to beat down on anybody, but the stats are there that single
Mm-hmm.
mother households do not produce the most successful kids. But the kids that have their fathers in their lives, and to your point, the single fathers produce the most high achieving kids because of that structure and discipline that they provide. It's not trying to be down on anybody, but that's just a statistical fact that's there, regardless of what you see in the world and what they try to promote. The end game is that when it comes down to both parents working together, it is a necessity to have that nurturing and that disciplinary balance.
And I think not to, like you're saying, we're not, nobody's beating up on single mothers. We
No.
love single mothers, and the overwhelming majority of our community are raised by single mothers. But at the end of the day, I think part of the reason, again, I haven't done any kind of, this is pretty much anecdotal stuff. What I'm about to talk about is, I think that when it's a single father, I think, like in your case, I really do think the community really comes together and coalesce around that, around that parent who happens to be a man, and trying to raise, his children, especially the family, because I think that our society, we put more stock into the matriarchal or the maternal part of growing, of raising children versus the paternal. But and I think with single mothers, I think a lot of times they get kind of a hard shot of like it's their fault, or something, to get a little bit more blame and stuff. And I think also people don't feel that, well, the kids they're not really missing anything when they're missing the paternal piece, so they don't kind of coalesce around that woman, because they feel, because often women have been duped in believing that they can do both.
Yeah.
That they can do, the father and the mother, the maternal and the paternal. And I'm, for one, I do not believe in this, happy Father's Day to a mother, because look, we do not need to minimize the impact and the that paternal that men have on youth. But so I think that's what happened, a little bit with with some of the single mothers.
You're absolutely right. I mean, the greatest trick ever played was telling women that you're so independent that you don't need a man in the household, or the government will go ahead and fund the part where the man will come in at. So we'll give you food stamps, we'll do all this stuff for you, as long as the man is not in the household. And then now the woman like, well, I got to play, you know, mother and father to a child, but you can't play the man role for a child, because when it comes to creating that discipline, that stature, it's kind of difficult because you see it every day where the child would try a man and get knocked down.
Right.
But then in some cases you see a child try a woman, and what happens? You know, it turns into an all out fight. You know, sometimes the child bests the woman, but when it's a man, you try it and you get knocked down, and you know your place right then and there.
Exactly. Exactly. And yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, I don't this whole thing of, we know that it was by, excuse me, it was by design.
Yes.
That you
Yeah.
know, a whole 60-year or so project of, you know, take take that brother out of the home. We will replace him with, like you said, handouts, food stamps, or whatever. And so, you know, it made it so much easier for you know, for a lot of black women, you know, back in the day and even now, to say, you know, well, I can do bad all by myself, you know, and that kind of stuff
Yeah.
came, you know, and then
Yeah.
all those kind of terminology came about. But at the same time, you know, they're doing this stuff like trad wives and everything else to say, you know, to keep this traditional stuff, you know, and it's like, well, you know, all these women, you know, primarily white women, are saying this stuff about being trad wife, traditional wives, and going back to tradition. But at the same time, you telling our, you know, are you making it to where institutionally making it too easier for a black man to leave the home. But yeah, I've never liked when I hear, you know, some, you know, a sister say, well, you know, he's the man of the house, he's the big man. No, that's a boy. That is a
Yeah.
boy. Okay.
Yeah.
I've you know, I've been a father most of my adult life, you know, had my children, you know, early 20s. And so you know, no, it is, you have to be, this is man's work. This is absolutely man's work. And some little 13 or 12 or 9, sometimes 7-year-old boy is being called the man of the house and my little
Right.
man and stuff like that. No, let him be a child. Let him be
Yeah.
a child. So absolutely, man. So now we're going to get to that co-parenting thing. How do you handle co-parenting, or discussions? You kind of hit on it a little bit, or discussions about the other parent. So now, from your perspective, you've already kind of told us some of the things that your son would come back, you know, home and
Yeah.
kind of say to
Yeah.
you that he's heard. But how do you parent? How do you handle co-parenting, and you know, and your discussions?
So I'm gonna talk about this from two perspectives. Okay.
Okay.
So the first perspective is that me and my son mother, and I'll be honest, we don't get along. I think that's a common scenario there, that
Pretty
we don't get along.
pretty obvious. Yeah.
So, but it's not to say that I have not tried to get along with her.
Right.
But in some cases, what end up happening is you have those conversations where you want to be on the same page with the other parent, but they don't want to be on the same page. They kind of want to do what they want to do. Now, ever since having custody of my son, his mother was rarely ever there. She didn't really start to show up until his high school years. And I think that was a whole manipulative tactic just so she can be in his life, to kind of finish out what she did when it came to high school. And so far as our communication, we couldn't communicate face to face. So we can't communicate without it turning into a little banter, then it turned into a full-fledged argument, just whatever the case is. So trying to maintain those boundaries of communication with her, I just do it by text. But as soon as my son got of age, I kind of cut all communication. So I just keep all my communication going through my son and say, hey, you know, what are you going to your mom's house? You know, just like when we got this car, I was like, hey, is she going to be able to cover your insurance? You know, she said she was going to chip in. When it came to prom, I took care of majority of prom. I asked could she help. She couldn't help. So a lot of those communications I only try to keep when it only pertains to my son. I don't really try to communicate with her on a personal level. I try to keep, and that's one thing I really want to say to guys is don't tell your personal business. You don't have to tell where you work. You don't have to tell where you live. Like, get that out of your mind. For years, my son's mother didn't know where I worked. She still don't know where I work. She only knows where I live at because I bought a house. When I lived in an apartment, she didn't know where I lived. I had primary custody. We had a pickup location. That was it. You don't have to share that information because all it does is bring more drama to you.
Right.
Like I can't stress that enough. Your life is supposed to be like a vault, very private. The only thing y'all have in common is a child. We got a pickup location, we got a drop off location, and that's it. Who you dating, it doesn't matter. Where you work at, that don't matter. Where you live, that don't matter. As long as we have this pickup location, whether it's a police station or McDonald's, that's it. If the communication is not about the child, I'm not having a conversation. I'm not having a conversation.
And I think right now you're specifically talking to the brothers that are in, your situation,
Yeah.
meaning that because for those ones that got, that has a beautiful, relationship post, marriage or relationship, or whatever, and they are able to be friends, then that's great. But I think you're specifically talking about those brothers who are in a situation like yours where just, the parents don't get along.
No, the parents don't get
Yeah.
along.
So that's who you're really talking to. I got it.
Yeah, like because I've seen it happen 1,000 times popping up to you. I've seen it in so many different situations.
Right, right.
And to have a peaceful mind and peaceful heart, just don't do it. Now, the other point that I would want to bring to the table is that when you are co-parenting and they get married, now you're co-parenting with, in some cases, an additional parent. Because when your kid go over there or they're over their primary, then now you gotta my mindset is are we all on the same page with raising our child? Because you have your parenting style, they have their parenting style, and we're all trying to raise this person, this kid, this naive little individual to be the best person that they can be in the world. And when you have three conflicting parenting styles, it becomes difficult and confusing for how this child is going to be raised. Even if they have their own one parenting style, does it conflict with your parenting style? And sometimes you may not be able to get on the same page with them, and then y'all just raising a child two different ways, and they know where they can get away with stuff at and where they can't get away with stuff at. They can run away from your house or not run away from your house and know it's discipline over there, but over there, they don't have to do no chores. It's free range. They sit around, watch TV all day, don't learn anything, not in no camps, not in no activities, no nothing.
I can see where that may teach a child how to become very manipulative,
Yes. Yes. And I've been in that situation where I tried to have the conversation so we can all get on the same page because there was conflicting ideas when it came to activities with my son. Whether it's him getting a car, dating, prom, whatever, and I'm trying to get on the same page, but she doesn't want to have that adult conversation to become on the same page. So then it just makes it more difficult for me to be a parent to my son, because when he goes over there for the summer or go over there for the weekend or go over there for the holidays, he comes back with the mentality that he had over there. And then I have to rearrange that whole mentality. Like, you got chores over here. You got to do this over here. You got to do that over here. Just because you didn't have to do it over there doesn't mean that comes back over here and then you don't have to do it. I had to go through that for a few years. And still some in his high school days, oh, well, I don't have to do it at my mom's house. Okay, but you got to do it over here. This is structure. This is responsibility. This is order. This is what's going to make you to be responsible when you get your own place. So, I just believe in, I didn't have chores when I grew up. I didn't have that discipline. I didn't have that structure. I could go outside, run around, and everything. So I understand the value of structure, because when I went into the world, I didn't know how to cook, clean, wash clothes, nothing. I was completely disabled on being able to do anything. I'm trying to show my son all the skills that I should have had before I even walked out of that door into the world today.
And and kids, young people, I know this, of course, from being a father of two millennial young ladies, and an educator, and just a man, that children, they love structure. They absolutely. So even, even when he's in the other places, whether his mom house or whatever, where there's really not a whole lot of structure, they say they don't like it, but they really do like it. And because structure, it provides, it gives you a feeling of safety, right? And
Right.
what children want is to be safe. And so yeah, I promise you, he is collecting all of this stuff. He don't even realize he's doing it, right?
Right.
But yes, that structure provides safety. What are I know you talked about achievement, with your son, but what are your hopes and dreams for your son?
My hopes and dreams for my son is for him to go further than me. Him to break the cycle that me and my dad created. My dad had me at 21. I had my son at 21. So trying to be able to break that cycle going forward and, him actually having a established family and not just, a baby mama here or, an ex-wife over here and then turn around and got married again. Like being able to kind of do things differently than how we did and then passing that on through further generations. You
So
know,
let me ask you this: Is it when you say, like you said, your father was 21, you were 21, but are you saying, is it more of an age thing, or is it more of a more of a traditional family situation, where it's a nuclear family where he's married and that kind of thing?
I
Or
would say more like I would say I want him to be having like a nuclear family.
okay, so it's more of a nuclear family than it is an age thing. Because the reason I say that is because now my wife and I, we were married or whatever, but we were early 20s. But the reason I say that is because I believe your son is going to turn out to be an excellent young man, and because of all of the just all of the community, all of the village in his life, right?
Hmm.
But I've just seen too many guys. They wait to be, at 32, 33, whatever, and then they get married. It's like, that's a pretty good age to get married. But man, and they have kids and they suck. You know what I'm saying? So I
Yeah,
think,
yeah,
so I think it's not so much. That's why I'm like, I think he's probably talking about that nuclear family
yeah.
that he wanted his father to have that nuclear family, and and then you wanted that nuclear family. But look, man, I just think that, and that'll be cool, or whatever, if that happens. But I just think he's going to be okay. He's probably going to have a nuclear family, but he's going to mirror what you're doing. And I think it's just going to be another one of those kids who are high achieving, raised by a single father. But I feel you. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, no, no, no. I appreciate that, but yeah, and I mean that's how I always looked at it. Is like what I want him to be, married, whether at a young age or an old age or how the case is,
Yeah.
and have that marriage
Yeah.
or at least long
And,
term
and, and
commitment,
plus, yeah, and plus,
situated.
and plus, you see how much it. I think you're looking at, man, how much energy and how much it took for you to raise your son, and you're still raising your son from a single parent perspective. So you like, I want my son to not go through that and have a
Exactly,
partner. Yeah, so I feel you. I
exactly.
feel you.
It I don't even think maybe only a few men actually know, the uphill battle that you got to go through with raising a child, because you actually find more appreciation for single mothers going through being a single father. But again, to went back to your point, you may have more people that's going to come to your aid in a community for a community as a single father, as opposed.
Yeah, because it's the exception and not the rule in America. So
Yeah.
everybody come out and pour their hearts out. You've seen those movies where guys try to take somebody's kid to the mall, act like they're single, so women can feel sorry for them, or want to date them because it's like, oh, single father, But
Yeah.
no, you're telling what the real thing is, and that's why I'm glad to have you on. Because we spend a lot of time as a single father. I know that you spend a lot of time being a father, a parent. So what personal goals do you have for yourself? Let's just say in the coming year.
In the coming year, So one of the things I want to do just for myself is, I want to elevate my podcast to new levels. I want to go into my other business ventures and seek those out. And I want to create a general wealth pathway for the next generations after me. So if we
Okay.
look at it, so say the
You're talking like generational wealth.
generational wealth.
Gotcha.
So if we look at the podcast, so we scale the podcast up and it starts to become profitable, right? So then we get those proceeds, and then we branch that off into another business venture. And then we branch off into another business venture. Okay. So my mindset now at the age I am now is, okay, I looked at what other people have done to become wealthy, and I'm not in fear of failure. So now, since my son is at the age where he doesn't need me as much, now I can focus on getting my entrepreneurship level to move up more and more and more and more over the next year. So going out there and experimenting and more growth. Now, a little bit beyond that, if I'm in hopes of getting married at that point in time,
Right.
I would definitely want to get married too in the next coming years. But I do want to align myself with more financial opportunity to grow financially.
Great. And I'm glad you talk about that generational wealth, and and I'm glad that when people tune in and listen to what we're saying, that it's like, yes, them brothers are talking about fatherhood and that kind of stuff, but also black men talking about generational wealth, because black men specifically, have been duped to believe to get wealth and rich confused.
Right.
And what I tell people in just layman terms, and I'm sure that other people tell people this as well. I say, hey, the difference between rich and wealthy: rich is what you got in the bank, wealth is what you leave
Right.
to your family. And so, and it ain't just some money in the bank. That stuff can go real quick.
And
What? Go
and
ahead.
but before you ask the next question, and just to add
Hmm.
to that, for anybody that want to get a real grasp on the idea of generational wealth, study the Rockefeller family. Look at how they actually started and how they created general wealth, how they became their own bank. And that's very powerful because we wasn't, and I can't speak for everybody, but
Right.
from the side that I come from, we wasn't always in tune with what life insurance policies actually meant to a family. And
Right.
we go so long through life without life insurance until the very last minute, and then it's costing an arm and a leg just to afford it.
Yeah, people, without turning this into a wealth podcast, but people don't quite understand is that the two quickest and solid ways to wealth, and especially generational wealth, is real estate and insurance. But
Yes,
that's a whole nother podcast,
that's a
so
whole
maybe
nother.
we'll
That's a whole nother
maybe
show.
maybe maybe maybe, maybe we'll get together and do it, brother. So people need to hear it. But uh, what advice would you give someone who is about to become a single father?
I will hope nobody's on their way to be a single father. But if you're on your way to be a single father, one of the things I could tell you is look at where you came from and how you want to be different. And the reason why I say that is because I grew up without my father. My mom worked to provide a life for us. So primarily my grandmother and my auntie was the biggest influences in my childhood life. And with that being said, my father didn't come around until I was 19. When my son was born, I realized that I didn't want to be in the same situation as my father. So I fought to be in his life from day one. Regardless of the barriers, regardless of anything that had happened, I fought to be in his life from at day one. So if you have to fight to be in your child's life, just understand that after 18 years of fighting or surviving or whatever you're doing, whether you get custody of your child or you're just there on the weekends or you're there daily, just understand that that impact will be more rewarding at the end down the line than it would be if you was never there at all.
Great.
So that's why I say look at the type of father that you had. Do you want to be that father, or do you want to be, or you want to be something different? Because like I said, my father was absent, so I know that's not what I wanted for my son. I didn't want to be an absent father.
Yes, sir. Understood. It makes perfect sense. How do you think society can better support single fathers, particularly black fathers?
I think we need more guys like us doing platforms like this, having conversations like that. I think we need more support groups that can help and support and guide fathers that are out there that either just got custody of their kids. Because we don't need programs. We don't need programs from the government. We don't need those type of programs or anything where it just funnels money into our pocket. We just need a strong community where guys can go and be vulnerable about their situation and learn from other fathers, whether they're experienced or they're new to the game, and they can find and build that community up. And I think that's the best way to do it.
And I think when you say it about the government, the only thing I could say, only I could think of, if I'm trying to if I was in a situation where I was a single black father, is just leave us alone.
That's
You know what I'm
cool.
saying? If you just get out of the way,
Yeah.
and just leave us alone, then you will see that most of these single black fathers will excel, and just stay out of the way. Stop trying to make it, stop trying to make policy and everything else work against that brother.
Yeah.
And he will
Yes.
excel, because like I said, going back into looking at in society, I just tell people, go to the park, go look, go and go, and even go ask educators, go ask teachers who are, teaching in these predominantly black, so-called inner city or urban or whatever trope you want to use for, for black folks or whatever communities. You will see some things that might even make you almost emotional when it
Right.
come down to these fathers, man. And we are different. We are a different kind of man, when it comes down to our children. And I think it's because of what we've been through, since around 16, 19 in this country. And so we've been snatched away, taken away. They've been snatched away, taken away. And we've just seen so much. And I do think some of this stuff is passed down through the genes epigenetically, to where we weren't there, 200 years ago when all this stuff was going down. But guess what? Things can get passed down through the generations. And so I just think what it's done is we know that we look at our kids much more precious a lot of times. I just from my anecdotal experience, watching black men with their children. And I know people are going to say, well, wait a minute, my husband or my boyfriend or whatever was a clown. I got it. But I'm talking my experience. And I've been all over this country. And it's just a different kind of man when I see black men with their children. So that's just my 2 cents on it. So
Yeah.
I see so many brothers like yourself, so it doesn't surprise me. I know there's going to be people that get, and that watch this episode, and they're going to be like, oh, okay, I don't see guys like that. But I'm telling you, you are, I see brothers like you all the time. We're going to jump into podcasting before we end this, because like I said, it's very exciting having my very first, fellow podcaster on. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about podcasting because it's part of your obvious experience, as a father, as a single man,
Yeah.
And so I first wanted to ask you, why did you decide to create a podcast?
Actually, I didn't. I did not decide to create a podcast. Actually, my first podcast I was on, some friends had came up with the idea to do a podcast, and I end up producing it. I end up engineering everything. I end up doing a production on it, cutting up the videos, posting them. Pretty much all they did was show up. So a lot of responsibility was on me to man everything because I was more so in line with technology. Then I ended up on the second podcast, and that didn't work out too well. So my mom actually came to me and was like, you do really good on podcasts when you speak and everything, and you love to talk. So why don't you just create your own podcast and do it by yourself? And I was like, I don't know about that. Like, what am I going to talk about? Like, I have nothing to talk about. And she was like, what do you mean you do have something to talk about? Like, you're a father, and you've been a father for a long time, and you've been doing it by yourself. Talk about that. So I started doing my research. I still was against the idea. And I started doing research, started kind of playing around, kicking around some ideas. I read a few articles that basically said, hey, if you ain't got 10 ideas, like off the back, don't even think about starting that topic. And I was like, it's like, all right. Like, and then I started writing down ideas. And I'm going to tell you, in the first week, I had about 60 ideas and topics to just run through. And then from there, so then I'm inviting my cousins on, and we're talking about being parents, and we're talking about, our fears as parents. And then they came around and was like, okay, cool. Then my other cousin came through and was like, hey, can we do a live show? And I'm like, do a live show? I don't know if we could do a live show. Like, well, let me do some more research and let me kick the idea around. And so we started doing a live show in December. And, we talking about 85, 80, I think like 87 episodes later, 17 lives later. And we just like, now we just on a roll.
Yeah.
And starting it, I didn't think nobody was going to listen. I didn't think anybody was going to want to kind of think about what I was talking about and feel like I was being spiteful and everything. Talk about my journey, talk about my court case, talk about the struggles of being a father, then trying to motivate people, trying to put a positive spin on Black fathers. I didn't think nobody want to listen to all of that. And, 300 and some subscribers later, and we still rolling. I still got people that want to come on the show, just like, hey, can I come on the show? I want to talk too, and I'm building community with other podcasters on other platforms, and now I want to do work with a whole bunch of other podcasters from Detroit. I'm trying to build with them and us work together and build each other's brands up and try to create a whole nother community here. So it's been rewarding on so many levels, starting a podcast. And it all came from, my mom's idea to talk about the struggles that I went through as a single father.
Absolutely. When I, it was so crazy because it was probably not even 10 days prior to, you kind of, reaching out. And I was like, wow, for instance, I have all these series that I'm doing, right?
Right.
And it had ran across my mind to do a series, a Black Man's Roundtable series on single Black fathers. But I'm like, oh man, it's going to be tough to get, single Black fathers or single Black fathers who want to talk, about their journey. And so I didn't include it. And I think I have 6 or 7 series for 2024 that I'm doing. So I didn't include that one. And then 10 days later, I'm like, see, I should have done it maybe, because God talked to us, or whoever we were, or whatever we worship, but whoever we worship in different kind of ways. And I'm like, man, but no, I just, I tell you what, I'll probably be doing a single black man's, BMR series for 2025. And
Okay.
because I like to do 5 or 6 different episodes for that one series.
Yeah.
And so I'm definitely going to reach out and hopefully even do some some ads, wanting to recruit and solicit brothers to come, because I'll be honest, I don't know hardly any single black fathers, because you guys are an anomaly. And like I said, usually you guys have some of the most genius type children once they grow up. So what advice do you have for people wanting to start a new podcast?
My advice is simple. Just start. Because here's the thing. I've always believed that you always had a story to tell. I've written books, I've did animation, and now I'm doing podcasting. And in each of those scenarios, there's always a story being told that people want to tune into. And then you never know who you're helping on the other end by sharing your story. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I realized when I started writing books, is that these stories, they feed people's soul. It feeds their intellect in some kind of way, and it may grant them an epiphany. It may give them a warm feeling or a relation to you, and you don't even know it. I've realized that there are some people that are in high places that don't know what people at the bottom are doing. There are some people that are in very dark places that can't see or understand what people are doing in the light. But then if you can meet all them people in the middle by sharing a story that they can relate to, then everybody gains an understanding of where everybody else is coming from. Especially when it's real authentic, when it's raw, when it's phenomenal, when it's overcoming, when it's achieving. And you pull all them people together and say, hey, here's a story for you. Everybody reason like, you know what, I can relate to that. I believe I felt like that, or I was in a situation like that. And your story provides that connection and can create a community that surrounds just that one story. So you just got to start and see where it takes you.
And stick with it. It is
That's
it is absolutely, it is a very slow process.
very.
People, you just have to just hang in there. But like you're saying, if you don't start, then you never know. But so that's I think people, you think people don't want to hear what you got to talk about, but they do. And I'm gonna tell you, and you may have learned this too, since you've been podcasting, is that people, matter of fact, I just said this in in an episode I did, I don't know, my last or the last one before that, I can't quite remember. I think it was my last episode, to where I talked about that people really, really do. People like listening to black men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I use an example of like when former President Barack Obama came on the scene, and I just remember all the white people talking about how much this great orator he was, just this great speaker, and it was so
Yeah.
powerful, Obama. And it's like, man, I just remember kind of laughing to myself and saying, man, in the black family, we got some uncle who would just stand up and just grasp your attention like that. So
Yeah.
we're used to seeing great orators. We're used to seeing, these black men get up and just take a room. And that's why, black, preachers and ministers and stuff like this, it's very easy for them to do,
Right.
right? It's very
Definitely.
easy for Dr. King and all the, because of, that's what we know. We have backyard cookouts to where, like I said, one of our relatives, man, this guy probably, maybe got a high school education at best, but this guy will get up and really just talk you to death, but in a way that you don't want him to stop talking. So I just always find that funny. So what I've learned is that, and what I tell brothers who want to start a podcast is that, people, whatever you're talking about, people really like listening to us. People really know that we know what's going on, and and we're all over the place. So that's kind of been my experience. So yeah. So look, tell the Black Man's Roundtable audience how they can watch your podcast. We're going to make sure that we promote and do some things and make sure you're out there. But let's tell them how they can watch your podcast.
Well, you can find us on YouTube, Farewell Mr. Nice Guy, or Farewell MNG. You can check out our lives every other Friday. I'm telling my story every Monday. We have a show. We got a show coming up this Friday that talks about gentle parenting. So we got a great panel coming out to have a conversation. We're talking about that, and we got some great more lives coming up soon. So you can check us out on YouTube, Instagram, Threads, TikTok. We got all our reels out there. We got all our shorts out there. So make sure you go out there and follow.
Absolutely. And look, brother, it's really been a pleasure talking with you. And like I said, you're in a unique situation in being a single black father. And like I said, my hat goes off to every single one of you guys, man. I've ran into some here and there, especially when I was an educator, and you guys are always impressive. And look, man, I just want you to just keep rolling and keep doing what you're doing. And, those personal goals that you talked about in this interview, brother, I hope that you achieve every single one of them. But now you are in the circle as well. I'm sure as well as I am in yours. You are in the circle of the Black Man's Roundtable, brother.
We appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely, man. We are gonna help each other out here as black men.
Definitely.
So look, MNG, it's been a pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure, man. Can't wait to do it again. Can't wait till we bring our community together and really get out there to our people, man, and spread some of this blessing and spread some of this knowledge to them. So I appreciate you, brother. So look, until next time, this is Black Man's Roundtable. I will see you in them streets and them suites. Peace. Don't forget to check us out on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Do you have show ideas or want to be on the show? Shoot us an email at blackmansroundtable@gmail.com. And please follow us on Facebook. 1,